Greetings, family. Dr. Daw back at you again. Dr. Daw in the building. Dr. Dennis Assault Winkler. Coming to talk about something today, family. Just wanted to jump in here. I was going to write a post about the topic, speaking to Terrence Howard and Eric Weinstein and on Joe Rogan's podcast. You know, I've been making some noise on Facebook. I've been making some noise out here in the streets about some of my thoughts around the Terrence Howard fiasco. Now, the thing that I have to keep a buck is that Terrence Howard has been speaking some things for some time now, and I've noticed that I've begun seeing people speak about Terrence Howard and that he's genius and all these type of things. Typically, I would not even notice that this has happened or is happening. But again, because people have been bringing it to me, I've decided to look at it. I decided to listen to what our dear brother has been saying. And the truth is, I'm a skeptic. What I'm saying is I'm a healthy skeptic, sometimes too much of a skeptic for our community. But I want to know what it is that this person is saying, what is it that he's doing, and what is it that has people interested in what this brother is saying. They talked about him being in Oxford. They talked about him saying 1 × 1 = 2. They talked about him saying so many things out here, so many things that are far beyond many of our comprehensions or our ability to comprehend. But we say and we imagine that because someone can come and speak in a way that is beyond our grab or grasp, that somehow this makes this person a genius. And I understand it. I understand the idea, I understand the concepts, I understand why we even want and desire what people call geniuses in our community. But again, I'm a skeptic. I am a skeptic of anyone who begins to come and say that they've done all these great things. And when, you know, let me just say, I'm somewhat of a person who, you can't sell me too much. I'm just saying, you just can't sell me too much, and I will upset your day if you don't want to hear something's closer to the truth. So when I saw Terrence Howard and I saw the things that he's been doing, I heard the 1 × 1, and I saw how he was using words and how he was conflating categorical terms with numerical terms and so on and so forth. I was not. Let me say again, I was not enamored. I did not think he was a genius. I'm just saying it. I'm just, and I know it's not always a popular thing to come and say these things. Now, I'm not saying he's not a genius. He's just not a genius when it comes to mathematics. Look, I am not saying I am a genius when it comes to mathematics and physics. In fact, he knows things that I don't have an idea what the hell he was talking about. But what I can do from my own background and training and understanding is realize when BS is being presented. I have that ability to do that. I have research skills. I have experience in understanding personalities. I have experience in dissecting many people like Terrence before Terrence came before us. I can pick up on lies. I can pick up on hyperbolic talk. I can pick up on people selling us stuff that they will never be able to deliver. And then I can also pick up on a mismatch of all types of languages, just putting it all together and making it sound really intelligent. And the only person that sounds intelligent too is the people who don't know no better. So that's what I'm saying. So I put out a post some time ago on Facebook, even Instagram, and I was speaking to this Terrence Howard being a genius thing, So I started looking at Oxford and what he said in Oxford and realized that what people thought he said in Oxford, and they thought it was so brilliant, and how he was using the fact that he went to Oxford as a way to somehow give himself credence, which I knew that it just wasn't. It just wasn't that. But again, let me have an off-the-cuff conversation with you. This is not about explicitly or exclusively Terrence Howard. This talk is also about Terrence Howard and his interaction, engagement on the podcast with on Joe Rogan's podcast with this guy, Eric Weinstein, who, you could, for all intents and purposes, you can see that this brother, well, I'm calling him a brother, but this guy, Eric Weinstein, knows some things. I would even say that he, in some ways, he put Terrence Howard in check. But I have a problem with Eric Weinstein's approach. I have a problem with how Terrence Howard responded. I just have a problem with all of it. I have a problem with the subtle microaggressions. I'm not even going to say it was subtle. I'm going to say that Eric Weinstein was exhibiting all types of microaggressions in that interview with our dear brother, Terrence Howard. Now, I think Terrence is a bit interesting. I think Terrence has said lots of things that he knew wasn't true when he was saying it. This is my thoughts. These are my thoughts. I think I can show these thoughts. But I also think that this guy Weinstein exhibited various microaggressions throughout and even before this interview. I have no idea who this guy Weinstein is, who he was. The first time I've probably heard about him, I think I heard a podcast. You know how you come across a podcast, but the person's not impressionable on you. You did, so I did come across a podcast with he and another guy, I forgot the other guy's name, discussing the Terrence Howard fiasco. But it didn't stick with me until after this Joe Rogan podcast. But I think that, let me just go in on this Weinstein guy a bit. Weinstein, obviously he's trained, he's intelligent, and again, even Terrence Howard is trained. Terrence Howard is not trained. He's intelligent. You can't deny that. But is he as intelligent in the things that he's been speaking about lately? I've been telling people no. I've even written a podcast. A post that says something about, what did I say? Let me see if I can find it on my phone here. I put something here on my phone, and we had some debate. I appreciate debate, family. I think we should have debate. I'm not one of those people to say, well, we shouldn't have debate. I think that good old debate is good sparring. But what I said on this podcast, on this post that I wrote on Facebook and Instagram, is I'll say it like this. Terrence Howard, please don't get me for this one, y'all, and Cat Williams deserve something greater than an Oscar. Their acting skills are at such high levels, or at such a high level, that you believe them. That's how I started off this conversation. And I had plenty of people coming for me, laughing and things, not laughing at me. Maybe they were laughing at me, but I assumed that many of them were putting a laughing emoji to identify that my post was funny, not necessarily that they were laughing at me. But there's also some people in this asking me questions about why would I say this about our dear brother Terrence Howard and Cat Williams, and where was he lying? Where was he acting, and all these type of things. I think people should have these questions. Again, I'm open for a good discussion. Even today, if you want to come up in here, I ask you to come in and let's have this conversation. But I'm looking at this thing from various angles. I'm looking at this thing from, this Weinstein thing, right? This Weinstein thing. I put the link in the chat, family. So I looked at this Weinstein thing from two angles. I literally, I wrote this up. I began to write this up earlier. Let me just read this, and we'll build off of this. I says, to my Terrence Howard crew, I must say, I don't like how he took that L. Let me say this. I said, I didn't even post this post, but I said, to my Terrence Howard crew, I don't like how my man took that L with Eric Weinstein. I do not like how Terrence Howard took that L with Eric Weinstein. I go on to say, a part of me was like, yeah, I appreciate someone checking him in a scholarly sense. But man, I didn't like how he, meaning Terrence Howard, turned from the genius who had the answer to all the world's problems with his technology, his hydrogen bubbles meeting in 4 places and all these type of things. This is not what I have written, but I'm ad-libbing right now. With this technology, I don't like how this man who was literally lifted up in our community and even other communities as a genius being debunked so easily on this Joe Rogan podcast. And not that he was debunked, but that he acquiesced in such a way. Because he came with all the confidence. He came with all, I understand, and this technology is going to save the world and change things and do this and do that. And even people were saying, where is the lie at? Where is the false at when it comes to Terrence Howard on my post? But I don't like how he had to change. I said, my man started the interview, this very interview with Eric Weinstein, saying 1 × 1 = 2, later saying that it is a metaphor, but then later doubling down that it is 2, then again saying it equals 2, ends up at the end of the interview saying that he did that just to garner attention. In other words, notoriety, to bring attention to what he is doing. So he said so much on one interview. I mean, so how do you begin to tease out what is true and what is not true when someone can go through so many different modes and so many different responses in one interview? And not to mention some of the things that he said. I know we want to be special and all this type of thing, and we want our people to have special powers, and how he woke up in his mother's womb and he told himself to remember in the English language. He told himself to remember that you have the answer to Einstein's theory of relativity or what have you. And then we have brothers, like 19 Keys and I think a brother Rich, whoever. I didn't listen to completely to their interviews, but I do know that I listened to 19 Keys a bit, and I think that brother is very interesting. That's all I can say. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. He likes to sell pseudo stuff, and that's cool. I mean, we can have fun with that. I think we all should have fun. I think we should all have fun, but we as a people, not just us, but I'm talking to us because these are the people that I tend to work with and people that this is my audience. But we as a people, we have to be able to discern, learn to discern when people are coming before us with snake oil, when people are coming to us with things that are too good to be true. And I'm not to say that there's nothing that can come out of a thing. But man, this guy said that he had this special thing and it can clean the water and you would never need this again. And it would change the trajectory of time. And then all of this and all of that. And then some people come to me and say, so what's wrong with his technology? What are you saying? And all this type of thing. And I say, well, I'm not saying that there's anything totally wrong with his technology or anything like that. But the reality is, No. They asked me, was he selling a product? That's what it was. What is he selling us? What is he trying to scheme us for? And then they said he doesn't even have a product. He's just giving out information. So then I go and find this technology that he talks about and this linchpin and all of that. And then he goes to Africa and try to sell it in Africa. And then I thought that the African brother who was asking this question was a little bit more shrewd than he was. He was like, oh, he was asking some very strong questions. And he was like, by the end, he was like, we'll give you land. We'll give you land. So he's selling something. And then he puts out this contest, and he puts this contest out to create this linchpin. And then people start to come to him and say, this is it. This is proving that Terrence Howard is correct and his information is correct. This is it. I'm saying, look, brothers and sisters, that was a contest. And this is a drone. This is a drone. This is very different than what Terrence Howard offered us. Just because you see a contraction flying around in so many different ways, and I'm saying maybe a new contraction, a contraction, maybe something that he did discover. But this does not prove that the 4 hydrogen bubbles or whatever he's talking about is in this particular thing and is going to clean the water and do all these different things that he sold people, like Akon sold people, how many people went to Africa and done the same thing, sold out people's stuff just to exploit them. I'm not sure. I can't say that Terrence Howard is exploiting, but I will say that if you listen to him, if you know a little bit about personality, the brother has some interesting aspects of his personality that should raise an eyebrow. It should raise your eyebrow just a little. And part of the problem is in our individual relationships and also our social relationships, such as the one we find here with Terrence Howard, is that we do not know how to identify many times the red flags, the personality traits to just notice. This guy woke up in his mama's womb. He opened his eyes and he started looking around and he started to remember he became conscious before all other humans become conscious. Other humans take some time to get to a higher level of consciousness as they after birth even. It takes some time to get there to become cognitive and complex in your thinking and things of that nature. But no, Terrence Howard, he did this all in the womb and he reminded himself because guess what? He's created this person. I mean, I don't know if he's lying or he believes this thing. But either way, if he's lying, that's a problem. And number 2, if he believes what he believes, that's a problem. I get it. We love the ether. We love the metaphysical. We love the thing that doesn't sound real. We love to live out there. That's fine. I'm not taking that away from you. I think we need a little bit of that. But too much of that will be damaging, right? Too much of, anything, left brain thinking, right brain thinking, any of that is just too much. And I'm going to talk about Eric Weinstein. See, Eric Weinstein, on the other hand, is a little real far in his left lots of times, but I also realize he's a bit of a conspiracy theorist himself. Listening to him a bit after I listened to the interview, which I don't like how my man Weinstein really tried to sun my man Terrence Howard. Terrence set himself up for it, but again, part of it is that we allowed this foolishness to parade around our community, not just our community. I'm talking about just the community at large. Terrence Howard is now the genius, and he's solved Einstein's theory of relativity, and he picked it up when he was in his mother's womb. He started on his mission at 6 years old or whatever it is, and then he began to realize that he was smarter than his teachers and all of that. He got a 1.6 GPA, and at some other point he becomes this guy who says that, I have a PhD in whatever physics or whatever he said. I don't know what it was, but nonetheless, one of those things. And then he says, well, I didn't know that. Then he comes back and try to play damage control, saying, I didn't know that I didn't get a honorary degree in nuclear or in physics or what have you. I thought that honorary degree was in physics due to my work in physics and so on and so forth. And not his work in acting, but his work as a physicist or whatever. This is what now this is the same genius that we're talking about. The real, I think Terrence Howard does a great job of really acting genius at one moment. He does a great job of acting genius one moment. Then in another moment, Terrence Howard acts very gullible and friendly. He can come hard at one moment. He was the genius of all geniuses. 1 × 1 = 2. And I will tell you how, because the math is wrong. The calculator is wrong. And then he sits there and he tells us, look, listen to this. When he's at Oxford, I don't think some of us actually looked at these things, but he's at Oxford. And he says, like, well, you know that our money system is and the banking system and all that is kind of built off of this 1 × 1 = 1. And so in fact, they're making money off of this. They're becoming rich off of this in a way. He might not use those exact words, but that's what that's what he implied. Like, the system is rigged, and because you give $1 times another dollar, and they're utilizing this mathematical system, and they're robbing us. Like, come on, bro. I mean, we were falling for this. For those of us who actually looked at it, many of us who looked at it, even when you look at it, some of us say, "Oh, he went to Oxford," but you know, by the time he finished at Oxford, he came there to sell this thing that I have this new technology, this new ideas, these new theories, and by the time he finished, all the children were asking him was about his career and how they could become a rapper and all this and all that. They weren't fooled, but us. Yes, again, many of us in the major pop and in the populace, we want a genius so bad that we accepted Terrence Howard as a genius, and he's not a genius, at least in the things that he's been selling lately. Is he a genius as an actor? I would say, boy, he's not. I mean, I think he deserves something greater than an Oscar, I said in my post, because he's definitely pretty good at that. And the problem with that type of personality is you don't know when he's telling the truth and when he's not. And I'm not saying that just because he hasn't given us evidence that he lies, because he says one thing and says another thing. Maybe he doesn't do that consciously. I won't say he's intentionally lying because I can't prove that. But what I will say is that he changes things up a lot. So getting back to Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein checks our dear brother Terrence Howard as the interview goes on. But what I didn't like about what Eric Weinstein was doing, and I feel like he tried to come across as the sincere white man, or, you know, he tried to come across as, you know, why are my colleagues treating Terrence this way? I don't know why my colleagues are treating Terrence this way. They're acting like he's crazy. Well, why don't you listen? And I can kind of agree with Weinstein on one hand. Well, you know what? Who knows? Hear everybody out. Hear them out. But I also can agree with those he was taking shots at. What seemingly seems that he wanted to take a lot of shots at Neil deGrasse Tyson. It seemed like he has a bone to pick with him. Again, I didn't even know who Eric Weinstein was until now. And so I go and look at his other interviews, and I realize he has a lot of problems with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He has a lot of issues with this brother. I mean, he was taking shots at Neil throughout the interview, even when he wasn't saying his name. If you didn't pick up on it, he literally said that Neil was he's pretty much academic, and that's about it. He's not a scientist. I mean, he doesn't know science. He knows how to articulate science, but he doesn't know how to conduct research and studies, and he's not a real physicist. He's more of an academic that can articulate and parrot what he's learned out of the books. This is what this guy, Eric Weinstein, said. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying he has a bone with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He also differentiates between there's popular people out here that are playing scientists on social media and those who are truly in labs. And I can't disagree with him because that's in all fields as well. Just like, you know, I would say some people like 19 Keys speaking about psychology was very pseudo, even when he was speaking about this very case of Eric Weinstein and Terrence Howard. Very pseudo. We like to listen to people who just make things sound good. Really make things sound good. You know, we like that type of thing. And I don't even, you know, does he really believe what he's saying? I cannot. You know, there's some questionability there as well with the crowns and lots of questionability around that guy, 19 Keys. I know we don't want to hear this because we don't understand red flags when we see them before us. Again, even with Terrence Weinstein. And then, as I've always argued, many of the things that we say, many of the theories that we say, many of the ideas that we have in these communities, in our pseudo-scientific, even some of our African-centered community, sometimes we're so ethereal. We're so intuitive. And nothing's wrong with intuition. I think that most people just aren't using it when they say they are. I think it's more about trauma, acting out like it's our intuition. We can talk about that another day. But what am I? Where was I going? This intuition. I mean, this pseudo-scientific approach has been in our community too long. We've been accepting people too long without identifying these red flags. It's like we're in a constant abusive relationship giving people these passes. So Eric Weinstein acts like he's going to give this dear brother Terrence Howard a fair share. I'm just going to give you my analysis here. But at the same time, he could not stop trying to beating up on Neil deGrasse Tyson. Well, for whatever reason, I don't know what the bone. He tried to act like these are my colleagues. I don't want to say anything. Let's stop this thing. But every chance he gets, he comes for Neil deGrasse Tyson. At the same time, but he said, well, Terrence, I really respect you. And he starts off with the love bombing stage at the beginning of the interview. Terrence, and da-da-da-da-da. And then he did say that I might have some criticism if I hear you out. But guess what? He knew that he was going to have some criticism. It doesn't take that much to know that he was going to have some criticism of Terrence. He knew what he said and what he was going to say. Terrence did not say anything different. Oh, let's slow this down. Terrence did not say anything different on that stage to this guy, Eric Weinstein, that he did not hear on interviews that he had on Joe Rogan and other places and spaces. He already knew that Terrence Howard had a lot of stuff with him. Terrence, he didn't get any great enlightening any breakthroughs with him sitting across from Terrence Howard. You don't have to sit across from Terrence Howard to begin to understand how his mind works. In fact, most of that stuff you saw before you got there, you got to analyze it a bit, think about it, and chew on it. Now, sitting there asking him questions, yeah, I get it. You asked him some questions, he fell into it. Other people asked him questions, and guess what? What he wants to say is, well, I don't even think Neil deGrasse Tyson can even understand what you're saying, Terrence. I just want to be honest with that. And, Terrence, I think you're a great actor. And I don't know. I never heard of you before and all this type of thing and all that type of thing. But nonetheless, by the end of the interview, he told Terrence, stop this shit. Stop this shit, Terrence. Stop it. Stop all of that, he said to Terrence. He said, Terrence, stop all this stuff. If you have anything at all, if you have anything, look, anybody want to come in and talk about this with me? The link is in the chat. Go ahead, let's have a talk if you want to join me on this broadcast. But stop he got to the point to say, Terrence, stop the shit. But again, I know I can surmise that this guy already knew exactly what he was going to do. He said, Terrence, out of all the things that you have here, he already knew this week. He said, but I think you have something in this. Perhaps. I don't know if you created it. I'm not saying you didn't, but there's something here. And then Terrence starts to go into this little frenzy again, talking about, well, I forgot what he was saying, but it was some old pseudo stuff again. Some things about, I don't know, hydrogen and the guy said, stop all that. Stop all of that. Stop that, Terrence. I want to help you. I want to help you. And in fact, to be honest, I'll tell you how I felt in that moment when I heard Eric Weinstein sit there with Terrence Howard and said, I want to help you. I'm just to be honest, I had feelings of what typically happens in the music industry when black people go into the music industry and people make propositions, knowing that they're not, and I'm not saying this is the case here, but this is what I felt something very similar at that moment when Weinstein said, I can help you with the math. Stop all the rest of that shit. Let me help you. I can help you. And Terrence was like, I want the help. So again, it's something about this interview or this whatever it was on Eric Weinstein and Joe Rogan and all of these, and Terrence Howard that just did not sit well with me. The guy made so many remarks that I was like, man, these are microaggressions. Now, I get it. See, Weinstein is also one of those people that probably say microaggressions aren't real and all this and all that. That is social activist science. See, I think Weinstein is I think he's very sharp when it comes to numbers. I just think he doesn't know real human beings. I think that he finds the social sciences being unreal because he doesn't understand too much about human beings and human emotions and culture and all these things. And he probably doesn't believe in racism and oppression. He even tells Terrence at one time, look. Stop that shit when Terrence said something about something being the Jim Crow or something. I can't recall what it was, but no, stop that, Terrence. Stop it. See, I started picking up on these cues that this guy, Eric Weinstein, has a lot of racism in him. And I mean from what social science supports is racism. His racial identity level is very low. He doesn't believe that racism exists, I can tell you, the way that most social scientists would argue that it exists, which is true. Now, because he's caught up into physics and math, but not knowing that we can quantify racism, right? And we can quantify racism's impact on the body. Now, whether one intended for something to be racist or not, we can argue that. But I go on and I start to say, something about this interview I really, really liked. I like that Weinstein put Terrence in his place to show the world that we need to stop and we need to realize that we need to be prepared when we bringing things out here before the public, because lots of things we say in our small little circles we think is genius, but I always told people that would never hold up on the grander scheme of the scientific stage or on a larger stage of science. And Terrence was evidence of that. He didn't have any more fight in him. This interview was embarrassing, and I disagree with Terrence. To me, I felt sorry for him. I'm not sure how he's going to come back, how he's going to respond, if he's going to work with Eric Weinstein or whatever. I don't like how Eric Weinstein was sunning Terrence in a sense. He was also speaking the microaggressions. Let me give you an example. One thing that Eric Weinstein said during the interview, and I don't remember it verbatim, but one of the things he did say is this. He said he knows the best or the most intelligent or something like that, African-American, some kind of scientist, and he teaches at university, or he's a researcher at the University of Maryland. And on a surface level, that can sound very affirming. It can sound very affirming to say things like that. Oh, he acknowledged the best black. I guess, I don't know if it was string theorist or what have you, but the fact that he within himself can identify the best black string theorist is indicative of, I said that's a microaggression, whether or not people really picked up on it and think it's more affirmative. How do you identify the best? It's kind of like saying, I know the best white rapper. Like, I mean, people might say Eminem's the best white rapper, but is that really true? We don't know. There's too many people in this world. I know the best. In fact, and you won't even really, you won't all typically hear that from us. But when you're in a place of quote unquote power and position, and you've adopted the idea of white supremacy, you can say things like that. And then I go on to say, let me research this guy because I don't know what it is that I'm feeling from him that just isn't sitting well with me. I started to notice that he makes plenty of texts on the sister from Harvard, Claudine Gay. He questions her. Not only does he question Neil deGrasse Tyson, he seems to give a person like Terrence Howard more time and respect, but then begins to diminish and says that we don't diminish Claudine Gay and says that she has a social activist PhD. And I get it. He doesn't really respect it. I can't off the top of my head recall what her PhD studies are in. But one thing I can say for sure is that he's not complex enough to understand it. Because if he did understand it, he could be a little bit more human. If he did understand it, he would understand the needs and the importance and the brilliance of people. But again, he thinks that he's the most brilliant, and his way of seeing the world is the most brilliant. And again, I go on to listen to some of his claims around COVID and all these type of things, which are pseudo at best. Not saying he doesn't have any relevance in any of his statements, but the guy is at the lowest level when it comes to racial identity development. He doesn't seem to believe that racism exists and and oppression exists and disparities exist. And he actually is good with microaggressions. Let me see if there's anything. I don't think anybody jumped up in here with me. But let me see if there's anything else I want to kind of close out on here. But what he does do is say, Terrence, again, you might have something here and let me help you. And again, that looked like the white man coming to a black man to again try to capitalize off of something that he's did. He says, I know the math. And partly why that doesn't sit well with me on the side of Terrence is this. Is that Terrence came before us and in so many words say he's a genius. He woke up in his mother's womb. He knew since the age of 6 that about these things and what his mission was or what have you. I might not have it totally accurate, but just get the idea here. And he was so brilliant that school wasn't stimulating enough for him. He got a 1 point something GPA. He went to this technical school, which he didn't finish. Then he got a PhD, which then we come find out in what he said was physics or what have you. And we come find out that's not true. He says so many things that should be red flags for our community. And I think we really need to really watch out for these things and really learn to understand personality and understand. I think we're addicted to sometimes to things that are supernatural in a sense. And I think it's okay. Again, we can have fun, but I think we need to balance that out. And we need to be able to identify those people who come before us in our community with stuff that are too good to be true. And we should build on we understand that this society has caused trauma in us, that we want to see genius in people in ways that are out of this world. But I think that we should also understand that we are genius and we have genius in our group, but it doesn't have to look like that. And in fact, that Terrence himself can be a genius, but he's not a genius when it comes to math, when we know clearly that 1 times 1 doesn't mean what he says. And I'm not saying that he can't create his own system, but him saying that 1 times 1 and try to utilize it, saying time one thing times another things can't be the same thing or whatever he says, knowing that really that's not the rule, that really is 1 time itself. So 1 thing times itself is the same thing. You got what I'm saying? Me times me equals me. And you know, I get it, but don't let down your intellectual or your intellect for superstition. I mean, don't close off your mind. I think in this case, Eric Weinstein does have a point that I really agree with. I can't say I don't agree with much of what Eric Weinstein had to say, but Eric Weinstein is definitely, he struggles with really being honest in some degree, senses, I'm going to say. And he was taking more shots at Neil deGrasse Tyson, and that was called for, and Claudine Gay for whatever reasons. I'm not even sure was this interview. Maybe he did, because he keeps talking about Harvard everywhere he goes. Well, you see what's happening at Harvard, he says. You see what's happening at Harvard. I'm not saying Eric Weinstein isn't an intellect. He's very intelligent, but there's a human aspect of intellect that he seems to be missing. And he seems to not find much importance in that. He comes off, from my optic, as fake humble, even when he was dealing with this Terrence Howard situation. Family. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sign out. Keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open. Question your thoughts. Question other people's thoughts. Really use your ability to think. I know thinking can be hard sometimes, because it requires us to really sit back and do some deep breathing, slow down things a bit. It requires us to question the things that we want to believe, to question the things that we already think we believe. So even with Terrence Howard, I'm not saying everything is wrong, and I think we should be open to that, but not blind in following that, because so much of the stuff he said should have been red flags in the first place. But at the same time, we can do 2 things at one time. We can understand what that Terrence Howard and what he proposed, and a lot of these ideas were conflated and intertwined and mishmashed and all these type of things, but also say, well, maybe, but let's listen to him. As a therapist, I have to do that all the time. You have to begin to read between the weeds. And the problem is, I don't think many of us know how to do that. We take all the weeds. Until next time, family, go ahead and like this video, share this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the station, follow me on all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all Dr. Dennis Asar Winkler. Until next time, family, I'm signing out. Blessings.